Hey, hi, what's up? Welcome back to Space Couch. We had a little bit of a break there, and it is good to be back in space. Uh, Couple of things. Um, I'm going to be up in the space camera a little bit today because the controller, the Magic Space controller, alt slash USB keyboard that I use to control from the couch got smashed, and uh, you may see the camera autocorrect here a little bit. At least that's what it's going to look like. We're flying around these solar flares that will sometimes distort the way that we beam this transmission back to you on terra firma from out here in the cosmos. But so I got to get up close into the camera slash spaceport to do all the space stuff. But it's great to be back. Like it's been a minute. Um, I mean, for you there on Earth, it's time works differently out here at the where space time curves. So it's been just a few minutes for me. But due to the nonlinear nature of time this far out, we just did a show in Boston. That was great. Oh, Champions of Breakfast and New England superhero Ray Calderon are already here. It was great. Uh, there, on my iPad, a notification came up that said Slider on Space Couch tomorrow, so got a little free advertising in here. Couple of things to take care of off the bat. Want to announce a new signing to our sponsor, Tiger Squawk Records, that just happened a few minutes before the show. Check out Grasp Logic from the Seattle, Washington area, grasplogic.bandcamp.com. Bonkers electro stuff. It's really, really wonderful. It was kind of a no-brainer signing. Speaking of Tiger Squawk, we have so many new albums out for pay what you want to pay. Check this out. If you're listening to this on the podcast, you'll hear some clicking on the space laptop. That's our very fancy space computer in the theater of your mind. So we have the new Virchow method from Isserly. It's Incredibs. Kind of a doom metal thing. I don't know a lot about doom metal, but that's amazing. Paraphilic Urges from the maniacs behind, at least one of them behind Screwdrivers with Stigmata and his brother, Noise Thing. Now you see yet another OST from Isserly, free game and free soundtrack. Very creepy piano sort of thing. And the new EP from Beta Virus, trancy techno stuff. I've been listening to it almost nonstop. In fact, the only breaks have been the albums which we just here said. That's what's going on at Tiger Squawk. What is going on out here today in space? A little bit different. We have a very highly requested guest. I will have you know. um, Came into my orbit through our friends Morris Black and former guest of Space Couch, Craig of Ohm. This is going to be great. I am already excited. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Slider. What is up, sir? How's it
What's going on?
Oh, well, I forgot to say my catchphrase. Call the ships to Davenport and prepare for Divanarchy. So, goodness gracious, thank you for joining us out here all the way in space. So much is going on with you. It's difficult to find an entry point. I will start with goodness gracious. Let's start with the latest full release of, is it Automata or Automata?
Automata is
Automata.
I
Okay.
think the correct way of pronouncing it, but
Oh, well, I mean,
you know
it's
how
your
things
album,
go.
so you can't do it
Exactly.
wrong, man. It's a motherfucker. Like it's amazing. Like uh tell me about it, man. Like is there any sort of unifying gestalt or what were there any driving forces behind this album, or um, what was the any undertow, to use a pun, for this album or this release?
Well, for me with Slider, I don't really think of myself as fitting within a specific like genre box. I
Agreed.
get really influenced by a lot of the things that just kind of come my way visually, a lot of films and stuff like that. So like, if you kind of look at my back catalog, it's kind of different, but I don't know. Some people always say that there's an element of Slider that's carried through depending on even if I do like a drum and bass track, but
Right.
I really just thought that I was, well, not thought, but just kind of felt like I was kind of burnt out on doing all this extra, like, curricular programming, lots of drum and bass, lots of tracks, lots of tinkering with the sessions and stuff like that. And I kind of set out and said, I don't really want to do that again. I was watching a Facebook Live interview with Orbital, and they were talking about Insides, which is one of my favorite Orbital records, and they mentioned that they did all of that album live
Really?
to tape. Like,
To tape?
obviously they did some, there's some sequencing on each of one of their bits of kit, but in the moment it was all just recorded down. It wasn't mixed, it wasn't sequenced, it was done live. And I thought, holy shit, that's awesome, because it's such an intricate record to listen to, and to me, timeless. Like, you could put on Insides right now and someone would be like, that sounds
100%.
modern.
Yeah.
So I took that as kind of like this light bulb. It just goes like, well, maybe you need to get away from the computer more. So the whole idea with Automata was like, okay, well, what if I do the opposite of automating and creating all of these, like, so that's the idea of Automata, is that you create like turning machines, things that self-operate. So to kind of flip that and do, all right, well, if I do a lot of stuff with my guitar and I'm away from the computer and I just kind of jam out and make these long, just recordings basically, and then kind of come back and do a little editing and stuff like that. But the majority of it was done with hardware synths, either with my Virus, or all the bass lines on it are a microbrute.
Kick ass.
So yeah, that was really the idea. It was like, all right, can I do more with less? So there's not more than 20 tracks on each, like, on the technical side of it, for people that know. Like, when we sequence songs, we have all these tracks of different instruments, and
I usually hit
about
35 or something, but like 20 that's.
Yeah. I use a lot of aux sends, and there's a lot of automation that goes on. That's all done live. Again, kind of just sitting there and kind of slowly tweaking it. And I think that's really why, like, Undertow works really well at almost 8 minutes, is because there's a lot of things moving that along. That's not just like this static 4-bar loop that just continues,
Totally. I mean, it's making sense now. Like, oh, hey, Brian of Morris Black is here.
What's up, Brian?
He gives you a thumbs up to the microboot. That is fascinating on a few levels. One, I'm kind of getting back into hardware myself, like rediscovering this whole world of metal crack and metal and plastic crack. And I would be hard pressed to believe that there's only 20 tracks in a Slider track, if you will, the multi-track. That is a good segue. Let's take a little listen to Give Me here. I'm just going to cut to this, and then we'll cut back, okay?
Cool.
We can talk over this if you want. You won't be able to hear the music, but it's super, super thick. I mean, not like thick, like it's like a brass band or something, but it is not wanting for. It feels like nothing's missing from it to my ear.
The gift of control to get deep inside. Where my faith lies.
What is? Oh, really? So that's like a plugin or something?
To plant the seed. You say the truth.
Okay.
I say need. And so you wanting to plant.
Get the fuck out of here.
cutting edge, and it's CPU intense, but like the end result is Automata. That whole record is mixed
Okay.
with like 80% Acoustica, 20% UAD, and a few other like choice little things. But yeah, it just really it pushed me away from this idea of having to have 40, 50, 60 tracks. Oh, I got to make this synth sound isn't thick enough, right? Let's layer it. Let's put another synth underneath
Right.
it. And all that shit that you would do to like beef up a mix is just like, nope, throw it through this EQ and boost that little bit of low end.
That's
And
awesome.
it just like opens up the whole thing.
Toss out that name one more time, man.
Acoustica.
Acoustica.
It's spelled Acustica, right?
Oh,
It's Italian.
okay. Well, Ashley in the chat room says that was lovely. We'll get into that track specifically. I'm just for the listener, and let me know if this resonates with you. The something about a digital workstation makes it really quote unquote easy, and then for me there's this little bit of hurdle to like physically get out gear and like put it on the table and plug it all in and hope I
Yeah.
don't like trip over a cord or something like that. And then I'm always happy when I do. But
Right.
The temptation to just go all digital is ever present.
Yeah.
Like if I'm on
I
like a plane or something. But I could not be more impressed knowing that this album was mostly hardware based. Oh, Adam of Big Time Kill is in the audience. Boston's own. We just heard Give Me, which features former Space Couch guest, one of the early ones, Craig of Ohm. Great track. You're next. It's out now on Bandcamp as a single, yeah?
Yeah, we did a little single kind of just to bookend the album because the album came out in May, and I really tried to approach the album kind of like a traditional label would of like, okay, let's get 3 singles, let's do one that precedes the album, one that's during the album, one that's after the album, just to kind of keep that momentum going.
Oh, good call.
And I figured Give Me it's one of my favorite ones,
That's great.
mainly because Craig just nailed the vocal.
Yeah, I didn't know that dude could hold a note. Like I'm used to him being all aggro, and then now I didn't know he sings like a GD angel. So
He's got some stuff. I don't want to spoil it, but he's got some stuff that he's working on that he showed me that's
Yeah.
going to be awesome, and I'm really excited for him because it's going to show a different side of him, and it's going to be great. Yeah.
awesome. Oh well, Tiger Squawk's own Science Fiction has pledged to pick up Automata later tonight. Yeah, you won't be steered wrong, my friend. It's quite strong. How'd you get in touch with Ohm or Craig of Ohm, I should say?
Facebook.
Really?
A lot of my collaborators have just come from just mutual appreciation of different musical genres and just shooting the shit. And if you're real to me and we hit it off, then I'll send you something and we'll see what happens.
That's pretty great, man.
That's what happened with Lights Out. We actually Craig and I met inside a Facebook group for industrial music, and I was like, do you want to try doing vocals on something? And I kicked just a session over him, and he nailed it. So I was like, let's keep going.
Very cool. Well, let's address the Bostonian elephant in the room. The Morris Black collab on this album is a beast. I've seen him play it a few times, and it's always a highlight of the live show. Did your paths cross in a similar way? Just discover each other?
Totally.
Awesome.
I was doing the Cause and Effect EP, and I was just looking for remixers, and I can't even remember how Brian got on my radar, but I saw some of his stuff, and I was like, all right, this guy, he's got something going on.
Right.
We just talking, and I don't know, it just happens.
Okay.
I think that's the best kind of creative relationships are the ones that you don't try to force or try to plan or like, I got to go out and try to get this guy to do stuff with me. Just let things happen organically, and you'll be surprised at the cool stuff that can happen.
Yeah, 100%. Just having that sort of simpatico rhythm of like okay, let's not just force this weird thing to
Yeah.
like come across, and one of us ends up doing most of the work just so the fucking thing gets out. And it's like,
Yeah, I've been there.
yeah, dude. I mean, I didn't just make that up. Oh, Brian says he's blushing.
No.
No, it's a great track. It's really good, and your vocals on that are pretty GD evil. I have to say, I do like what's kind of. Correct me if I'm wrong, but your signature delivery, this sort of cinematic big bad overvillain, I really dig it. Like, is that is that like a technique you've been honing?
Vocally, it's like being a musician. It's like very easy to control a synthesizer. It's very easy to control a guitar tone. Those kind of things. But when it comes down to your voice, you're stuck with what you're born with. And for the
No, I
longest
know.
time, I hated the way that my voice sounded, and I was straining so much. I mean, because I come from that, like the grunge when I was in middle school. Like
Totally.
grunge was a big thing. So I had grunge bands. I remember, being in middle school with friends and doing stuff like that. And I just really wanted to step back and be like, all right, well, how can I really get my voice to somewhere that sounds good to me, as well as being vulnerable enough? I think that's the biggest thing. Because if you put too much bravado into it, I think that doesn't really feel natural
Yeah.
to people.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're like, doing butt rock or something, maybe.
Well, I mean, certainly there's genres that like that's kind of part of it, but like, if I'm like, I mean, I think people can kind of osmotically, if you will, pick up that front of if I'm trying way too hard to sound like I was in World War II or something like that. Like it's not gonna work.
Yeah,
I
totally.
but
I pick up on it too, and I think that's where you start to get self-conscious, right? Because you start like seeing how other people do it and be like, oh well, I can, that gives me that vibe, and how do I make sure that I don't portray that vibe in my own stuff? And it's a work in progress. I feel like finally with Automata that the vocal performances that I did on that are something that I can at least personally listen to. Because a lot of my old stuff, I'll listen to the vocals and be like, oh no, what were you thinking?
yeah, that happens. I think it's great. I wouldn't worry about that. But I definitely I echo the sentiment. But it's awesome, man. You got a ton of tracks. Like your dollar to track ratio. If you go to confusioninc.bandcamp.com, which I suggest you do, to pick up Automata is pretty awesome. So thumbs up there. I appreciate your economy of scale, sir.
Well, I've been doing it for a really long time. I think that's what most people don't realize, because I fly so far under the radar with a lot of what I do that people don't realize. Like, I came up with the idea for Slider around 2006. And I really didn't get anything off the ground until around 2009, when I was starting to do some different tracks with some of the people that I worked with, and I did a hip hop track called Hell's Gates. That was kind of like my gateway, but by then it was more like 2010, and then I've just kind of been rolling, doing the Slider thing this whole time. So,
well, it's a little bit under the radar. We'll certainly get into your pretty awesome film TV repertoire. So let's get this out of the way. Slider is not yet a live act, or is that even the right vocabulary to use?
I always like to think of what I do as being a recording artist. Because when I grew up through electronic music, listening to, even though Orbital was a live band, but you think of like Autechre and all those other groups, that I was like, well, this is an album format to me. This is like a very, what's the word? Just armchair, I guess, is what people normally call it. When you're not like out and about and listening to it in a club. And I really just really attached myself to that. So I really like the idea of being a recording artist, and then to couple that with some of the health problems that I have, it kind of makes it really hard to think about getting on stage and and doing something live. And I'm not, again, going back to the bravado thing, I don't know if I would pull off a really good stage performance.
Well,
you know? Because when I used to DJ, so back in like the aughts, I was DJing around LA, and back then, a DJ, you stand behind the booth and no one even paid any attention to you.
right.
So I really loved that because there was no persona. There was just you're playing records and people are dancing. And then things started to get into cake throwing and all that other stuff. And I was like, it's not for me.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Understood. Yeah,
just got to stay a recording artist, I think.
sounds good. Like there is that, especially like when you were saying like way back in the day, like when I first started getting into like the frontline assembly, I was like, how would you even do this live? Like it sounds like
It's
a
all bad.
movie. What's that?
That's what people like don't realize. Like if you go back to like those 90s, like if you watch Glastonbury with like The Prodigy, it's like 90% that and then Jim on the guitar.
Good stuff. All right, hey, Dan's here. What's up, Dan? So we'll remain in the studio for now, but or for not for now, but we'll remain a recording artist, but certainly a superstar of one. It's good stuff, man. We played a little bit of a track at the top, but this whole weird space couch thing has fallen into a trap, pardon the pun, of describing music in terms of Dungeons and Dragons, classic video games, or cartoons. But for the first time, I will give you the opportunity to choose one of those three genres, or mix and match to the degree that you like. But what the anthropomorphization of Slider be in said terms?
It's a hard one because it would depend on what era of Slider.
Mm-hmm.
But if we talk about Automata, I was thinking about this, and I don't play Dungeons and Dragons, but I would say that Automata would be the record to describe as like Aeon Flux has sent a mission into the House of the Dead.
Oh,
how's that?
Okay, dude. You see, all this hesitation at the beginning, then you just sniped it like an assassin. That's amazing. Oh my God! Like I'm gonna think of those like 7-foot tall emaciated people in thongs every time I listen to your record now. In House of the Dead.
Yeah.
With just like you maybe like do a Doom style where you see like the super skinny arm at the bottom of the screen holding like the gun that. Oh gosh. So, Aeon Flux playing House of the Dead is Slider. You heard it here first on Space Couch. I love it. We talked a little bit about Orbital as a musical influence, which I wouldn't have pegged at the start, but now that you say it, I can totally hear it. Like there's maybe 6 things going on in the song, but it sounds like there's 26. If all your influences got together to do like a romantic comedy, what might that romantic comedy look like or feel like?
Well, the tricky thing was a lot of my influences I don't think you would peg for a romantic comedy. Like I grew up, like there's a lot of stuff when you're like young that really influences you and pulls you into genres and exploring music. So I don't know how much would pertain to that, but I would say that the most fun influence that I have would be probably Carl Hyde from Underworld.
Yes.
I could see him maybe as a romantic lead in
my
something.
God, I would pay all the money for Hyde as the lead in like a romantic comedy. Oh God, that'd be great. Yeah. And
you have to throw in somebody like maybe Silver Surfer and Rude Boy from Urban Dance Squad or something.
Yeah. Like he's like the wacky best friend, and
you have to bring that big hat he used to wear. It's like Mad Hatter hat. I don't know.
Yeah.
It would definitely be the weirdest romantic comedy that you could probably, and then you'd have to have somebody direct it. I would pick somebody weird like Alex Garland. I would like to see what he would do with a romantic comedy.
Oh God,
You know,
you'd have to call
coming
it
off
like
Annihilation and
you could call it like Tomato. Yeah, it's just like there's all the underworld like nutty visuals going on in the background, like Annihilation style. And if you made three, it would be a dirty epic. Yeah.
there you go.
Yes. Oh yeah, yeah. Like let's say he's like dating Orbital, and he can't. But like Orbital can't stand the Urban Dance Squad like nutty best friend. Like yeah, then they yeah. And there's
Get
got to
Simon
be.
Pegg to have a cameo in there too.
Oh yeah, I mean it goes without saying. Like his name has to be like Juno or Korg or something like that. There we go. We just made the, and then you'd have to show up at some point. Like maybe you like work at a Dunkin' Donuts or something like that. But like, we just made the slider, dirty epic romantic comedy. Yeah, awesome. We'll call the Urban Dance Squad. Yeah. Oh, Dre from Scilab in the place. What's up, man? Bringing all the rock stars out, which has weirdly become a theme here on Space Couch. Chris Tucker of Type Trauma. Thank you everybody for coming out. But really, the hero here is Slider. That sort of smash cuts us to not only would you appear in this weird Carl Hyde romantic comedy we just made, you have a dope IMDb list. I'm going to cut to it visually right here just so people can see the Lethal Weapon TV series, House of Lies, Bones, True Blood. What? Like, pretty incredible. How does that come about for you? And I'll be guilty of asking how can one make that happen?
That's the first question people ask me.
Okay, I do apologize for falling.
It's okay. Everyone look, like as soon as I mention, they're like, "Oh wait, how do I do that?"
Right. Well, I mean, you don't feel like the need to divulge like industry secrets or whatever.
It's tricky now because what my answer would be to get a time machine and go back about 10 years.
There it is. Right.
Because if you're looking at my IMDb, you can kind of see I'm a little stalled out there after Lethal Weapon. It's mainly because it's just become so flooded. I got my whole start with this with True Blood. So you have to go back to like 2011, I think that one is, right? 2010, 2011. And it's really... So and being in the right place at the right time, like everything is. So here I am. I'm in LA. Started working with my friend John Gerges, who at the time had a band called Spider Problem, and I was doing some remixes for him. And he knew Gary Calamar, who's the music soup for True Blood. And Gary was like, "Do you guys have anything we could fill in this kind of stripper scene in Fantasia?" And John was like, "Hey, I'm working on something with my friend Colin." Pitched it. He said, "We love it." Necroplasm Fix. Bam, went in the show. Through that, a sync and agent got my ear and was like, "Do you need someone to manage your catalog?" And I was like, "Yeah," because at the time, a lot of music sync was looked at by a lot of those top tier musicians as like selling out. I remember watching Damon Albarn from Blur on that Q show in Canada, basically lambasting all of it. Like, called it the homogenization of music and stuff like that. So that's kind of the mentality that we had at that time. So people like in the indie world, like Cell Dweller, he really pushed the sync stuff because they needed music and not a lot of these majors were playing ball. So as unfortunately the music industry continues to tumble and people stop making as much money off of records, they go, "Well, how do I make more money off my catalog?" So at the end of True Blood, instead of, like them having to scramble to find indies like us, they had people like Marilyn Manson wanting to write a song specifically for True Blood. So my conversations with my sync manager nowadays is like, oh, it's a buyer's market.
Right.
So like my advice honestly would be is to get a good sync rep, and a lot of the times that happens by being in LA or being in a big market. It's really hard to be an external away from that market because you have this cottage industry now of people who are like bedroom musicians who just write catalog music.
A
That's all they
sync
do.
rep. I'm sorry. I don't know what a sync rep
Oh,
is.
yeah, I should probably mention how this works.
I mean, like, we don't need to
Yeah.
get like crazy into the weeds. I just don't know, like, step one.
Sure. The easiest way to think of it is every TV show and every movie has a music supervisor, and they work with the director, and they go, "Well, we need something that kind of sounds like X, Y, and Z for this
Oh,
scene."
right. Okay.
So now the music supervisor has to find that, and usually they'll go out and send emails out to managers who have catalogs.
Okay.
So sometimes that's your publisher. Sometimes if you're indie like me, because I do all my own publishing, it
nice.
goes to my sync manager in LA, and he goes, "Oh, Colin has a song like that. Fire that over," and they go yes or
Awesome.
no,
Okay.
and that's how it moves forward. So you can think of it as like back 10 years ago, they would get maybe like 20 songs for a call out. Now
Okay.
it's 200 to 500.
Right. Yeah. A friend of mine, low grade fame, Kevin McLeod, the erstwhile royalty free music king of the internet. Like, people ask him, like, how do you live off of royalty free music? And he's like what you said, get a time machine, go back before, like, go to when there was a 19 in the calendar, and
Yeah.
you be the first guy to set up a website. Um, you also brought up something that I find really interesting. When, like, the whole grunge thing when I was in middle school too, selling out, that term selling out was tantamount to first degree murder. It was like the worst thing you could fucking do.
Yeah.
And now I feel like that's gone 180 degrees, and getting like a Nike commercial or something that would be like a feather in the cap, or like every podcast is sponsored by stamps.com, and that's awesome. Like, it is a weird uh, shifting that people are finally okay with guys in their basements getting stuff into episodes of Bones and it being awesome.
Yeah, I think part of it, I think, is the ethos of where music was, because you remember like Kurt Cobain basically miming and then smashing the guitar because he doesn't want to do that shit.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the ethos, is like fuck the man. Whereas now there's really no man.
Right.
We're down to what, the big three labels. It's like every man for himself. And I think a lot of music fans realize how kind of difficult it is for us to make a living at what we do. Hence the rise of Bandcamp, because I run into a lot of people who, like, they want the CD. They don't have a CD player. They just want the CD because they want to support me. Or they grab the Slider t-shirt. I think that is kind of the reason why maybe the term selling out isn't really applicable anymore.
Right.
But I always go to defer to Warren Ellis, the writer, because he said that there's no such thing as selling out. There's getting paid to do a job the way that you want to do the job. And as long as you're doing the job the way you want to do the job.
I love that. Oh, that's dope. Oh, that's great. Warren Ellis. Awesome. Yeah, Morris Black says, I want to sell out as fast as I fucking can. Witness me, LA. Yeah, I would love that. And I mean, there's so many channels. Like, I would have never thought I would have had what I call a TV show, 5 years ago or a year ago. I mean, I was working on the physics and stuff of getting my couch to, physically out into the cosmos, and then the whole show came after that. Because you need like life support set up and stuff like that. But hey, it's 2019. I get to have a show and talk to the amazing Slider. So, yes, many avenues for that. Get a sync rep and move to LA if you want. Make sure you have a.
I will say this. All right, the last thing I will say, just
Yeah.
for anyone listening, is stay the fuck away from websites like Taxi or anyone else, even TuneCore, that tells you that you're giving up your publishing
What's that?
to have them be your rep, because they manage millions of songs, and the just even if the percentile of you actually doing something is so minor.
Oh,
Find
really?
somebody who's an actual person who likes what you do and knows what your catalog is. That's really the best thing.
Really?
Because if you're another number in a spreadsheet on a website for whoever
Right.
the company is, because there's so much clandestine shit that's out there just to take money away from musicians.
Okay. Yeah, like you don't want your year and a half of work to boil down to like Zippy Dance Tune 6 and just be passed over.
Yeah, if you're even lucky.
Okay.
That's the thing. Just be wary. There's no such thing as like a perfect website that you can sign up for, and if they're asking you for money, then run away.
Interesting. Okay. Cool. Space Coast will never ask you for money, unless I do in the future. Selling out. Woo! I would love it if this show was brought to you by Stamps.com, but we are very happy with our progenitors, Tiger Squawk Records. The Slider title has a lot of tracks that you've reworked. There's like the classic sort of industrial or electronic, if you like, remix, and then you'll bring back a track as like the new edition. I am curious as to the impetus for that.
I think, well, maybe you'll agree with me on a creative level that things aren't really ever done.
Yep.
I really just kind of get sick of working on them, and that's usually the ding, we're done.
Right.
Let's move it out there. But if I run across something later on that I go like, oh, it'd be kind of fun because that has that kind of vibe, to flip it and do it in this kind of vibe, like I did kind of like the retro wave revisioning of a couple of the songs on Cause and Effect. I don't know. I feel like a good idea can be rehashed as long as you're not beating a dead horse too much. And sometimes it even has to do with sync. Sometimes my manager will hear something I did 10 years ago and be like, hey, can you kind of flip this and make it a little more updated?
Oh, okay.
So,
Fascinating.
I'm always open to like not keeping projects done in that sense of like can't be touched again.
The adage of good tracks are never finished; they're just abandoned.
Yeah, that's Da Vinci, right?
Yeah, I heard
Art's
Skrillex
never
say
finished,
it, but same thing, lateral move, right, between the two.
Yeah.
I get them mixed up.
It's the hair.
Line of the episode right there. This is all Slider and the stuff under Colin, and perhaps another title that's not coming to mind right now is under the. Thank you. I'm very professional here. I get Space Madness every now and then just because it's
all
me.
that artificial gravity, man.
Yeah. I mean, Space Dog every now and then walks in front of the Camry here, but Space Dog comes and goes as she pleases. She's a completely cosmic entity and can bamf out into the void. So I get a little Space Madness and forget. But this is all done under the banner of Confusion Inc. Is it fair to call that a label, or how do you?
I mean, it's a label in the sense that when I put the music out and it asks me to fill in the field, what's the label?
Right.
I put Confusion Inc.
Totally.
I mean, otherwise it's not. I don't like actively search for other people, and I really have no business sense whatsoever. I mean,
No,
you can ask my wife. I'm like, math is not my forte. Spending money is not. I just spend money.
Yeah, that's.
That's so. Confusion Inc. was just kind of like, all right, well, I do all of these things, and it is kind of confusing. So,
Is that where it comes from?
Yeah, I don't know. I really
brutal.
like adding negative connotations to things. Like my publishing is negative feedback.
Okay.
And a lot of people think that actually means like giving somebody negative feedback. But I chose it because it's positive and negative feedback in synthesis. So but it works both ways, I guess.
No, it totally works. So not not everything comes out under the same moniker. Then, like you've created this uh, net for your output. So, what might discern or distinguish a slider track from a Colin Cameron Allers track?
That's a good question. When I think of slider, and I think of the genesis of creating this persona, if you will, was trying to take the electronic dance stuff that I was doing in the aughts, because I had a different moniker and I was doing basically club music, progressive breaks, progressive house, and I was getting sick of making that formulaic stuff that you play in a club, because it's very it's like you got to have your intro, you got to do this, here's your breakdown, and it just felt very assembly line. So it was like, okay, well, how can I take some of that and apply it to more of that kind of industrial or just rock and roll influence that I also have, and find that happy medium? Because it's always interesting to me when people listen to my slider stuff, they'll either say like, oh, this is kind of like electronic dance, but it's too industrial, or somebody will say this is kind of industrial, but it's too dancey. It
does sit in a very I hit the I gotta move my space camera. You saw my apartment a little bit.
The jig is up.
No, I just have the spaceship that looks like an apartment in Boston. Where you're originally from, the internet tells me, which is cool. Not Boston per se, but the Massachusetts area.
I was born in Plymouth and grew up on Cape Cod.
That's awesome. Before we hit some space turbulence and reality altered a bit there. You were talking about moving away from an assembly line of music to a weird, and I use the word weird in with a capital W. It's the best compliment I can give. Genre where like I had Craig was a early guest here on Space Couch, and I'd heard of Slider at the time, but I wasn't the fan I am now. And he goes, "Yeah, I'm on the Slider track," and I'm like, "What's it sound like?" And he goes, "Well," and I'm like, "Okay, now I know it's gonna be good." Like if you can't just bust out, "Oh, it's future pop," even though I like that sort of thing, like it's that the wind up before you describe a track is like almost a genre unto itself, I think.
I honestly hate it. I really don't like self-applying genre or like sounds like X. I'd rather the audience figure that out. I'm a big fan of just kind of like, I write for me, and I really like being in that moment of being introspective or getting whatever it is that I need to get out, and then letting the song or the album have its own life beyond me with an audience, and you guys can figure it out. You want to put it in an industrial category, go for it. You want to put it in electronic category, go for it. I really don't like thinking of music that way, because I feel like it gets very constricting, and then you get people who expect things from you.
Yep.
And for better or worse, that can be, some people like that, like, oh, I know if I pick up a Frontline Assembly record, it's going to sound like Frontline Assembly, even though they do have, they kind of dance into different stuff. But I don't know. I'd rather people be, I wonder what this is going to sound like. And again, for better or worse.
Totally. Like, I've been doing songs about video games for 20 years now. Like, I'm getting back maybe into new Gothical stuff, and it's like, do I gotta like pick up Guardian Legend and play through it again just so I can have not have people riot on me? But is that subversion of genres or need for diversification where the Colin versus Slider banners come from?
Yeah, so to kind of bring it back is like there's only so much you can push people before they'll go like, you're fucking with my head too much. So with just writing stuff under me, it's really just me feeling like, what if I made some trip hop? What if I made some indie tronica kind of stuff? And That's some of the stuff you'll see under the Colin Cameron Aldrich stuff is like, I really love film score and I love films. I think one of my biggest influences is watching a good film, or I can totally get lost in it because the next day I'll wake up and I'll be thinking about the film. And the next thing I know, I'm in the studio and I'm kind of writing with that somewhere in my creativity. So like when I did The Beyond, I just kind of scored this imaginary sci-fi film.
Oh, awesome.
That record, and some of the little EPs are just kind of like, one of them is Untold, which was just me having insomnia and playing with samples on my laptop in kind of like a burial sense of just like mangling different sound sources and
Awesome.
on a sample only kind of level.
Uh-huh.
So yeah,
Okay.
I just like doing a lot of different things. I kind of attribute it again to being like that kid in high school that had like DJ Dan, like rave mixtapes, but then also had, Frontline Assembly and Chem Lab and Pigface, and so
Right. And
being
it's,
all over the place, kind of.
yeah, not only that, but you're
Writer.
secretly like on the track team or something. Like you're covering like all these bases.
Never sports. I've never been good at
But yes, I'm picking up what you're putting down. But in terms of like allowing yourself to diversify without, you know, pe- people, for better or for worse, might expect something from a Slider record or a Horrorful record or any of
Yeah,
that.
totally. I mean, that goes into this whole, and I hate to say it, the branding that's involved.
Mhm.
Like if you're trying to stand out nowadays, there has to be some level of branding. Somebody has to be able to go like, oh yeah, I know that because of X, Y, and Z. I can draw that correlation. So that's why I try to keep Slider somewhat contained. And then if I branch out, like I'm already percolating on going into 2020 and thinking about maybe revisiting the Horrorfall ethos, but within a new project, because John and I aren't really working together anymore because he's still in LA and I'm in Portland, and it just gets a little trickier.
Tell me about that, because that sounds amazing. Like, give us the 140 character breakdown of Horrorfall, and I was gonna ask you what's next for the Mighty Slider. It sounds like this might be it.
Well, as far as horror, like the idea with Horrorfall really was the True Blood thing. Honestly, we had worked on this little piece of music that was kind of like, I don't know if you listen to Necroplasm Fix. It's mostly instrumental and it has a lot of kind of grungy guitar, but also break beats. So I think John and I, our whole idea was like, okay, well, how do we expand on this, and how do we kind of like maybe ride the True Blood coattails a little bit?
Right.
So we did a whole record. And it's just kind of like towards the end of doing the record, things, people who were involved kind of fell out. Like I had this grandiose plan for Horrorfall being like a musical collective. I don't know if you're familiar with the band Archive from England, but they have this musical collective idea where they have revolving members and people come in. And I always really liked that of like, okay, well, what if a band wasn't a fixed amount of musicians? But in the end, it bit me in the ass.
In what way?
Because, well, people started to get into other projects.
Okay.
Some of the people that I was working with just kind of moved off of music altogether.
Okay.
So it kind of just left me with this set of songs that I kind of like, all right, I'm going to finish it and I'm just going to put it out.
It's the way it gotta be sometimes.
Yeah, totally. So for doing that again, I'm going to not do that again. I'm not sure if I'm ready to divulge the ideas that I have for what will come in maybe Horrorfall 2.0. But as far as Slider goes, I'm definitely doing something to celebrate the 10 years of Slider.
Oh, man.
I kind of think of 2009 as where, like, when Hell's Gate was done and kind of like felt like, all right, I knew what Slider was and I knew where Slider could go. Now it's 2019. It's like, fuck. There should be something to kind of celebrate that. So I'm doing a remix compilation where I've gone back and picked some of my favorites.
Hell yeah.
Automata, Science of Noise, even Hell's Gate. And pulling out some older remixes that people might not have heard, but also then getting some people to do some new remixes. Like there's going to be a Rabbit Junk remix.
Yeah.
Hunt.
I talked over the one after Rabbit Junk. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. JP's doing a remix of The Hunt.
Oh, okay, great.
I also have Out.
Yeah.
Dean Garcia from Space Echo or SB Echo, however you want to pronounce that. Keith Hildebrandt from Nine Inch Nails.
What?
So yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Damn. Okay. So look for that at, I'm assuming, confusioninc.bandcamp.com.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna do it in maybe December. I have all the remixes turned in, so it's mostly just logistics of getting it mastered and
Oh
choosing
man,
some
that's
cover art,
exciting.
choosing a date. But I definitely want it out before the year's out because that kind of solidifies that the 10 years of doing this. And then October, I'm actually gonna go. I've already written them. I've done a bunch of break beats again, which is
Oh
something I
man,
haven't done in a long
the
time.
dude is a machine.
I swore him off for a while. I was like, I don't want to do anything club related. I don't want to do any breaks ever again. I'm so burnt out. Like drum and bass programming and breakbeat programming. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm not doing this again. And then, never say never.
Well, I'm laughing because step one is I'm not gonna do this thing, and then step two is that thing. Often, but I am. Oh my gosh. Space Couch exclusives all over the place. We have the possible resurgence of Horrorfall. Look for Rabbit Junk, Chris of Nine Inch Nails, among others, on a remix disc in December. Oh, this is going to be great. Man, uh, you talked about getting inspiration from movies. Whether a track from a movie is forthcoming or not, I would be wildly excited to know if you've seen anything that moved you recently. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, I know, but
Oh, geez. I think I'm still reeling from Annihilation, to be honest.
okay. I've
I
heard
need
it's
to. I
great,
need
and I
to
haven't
sit
seen
back
it.
and rewatch that again. I know it sounds cheesy to say, but I really love hard sci-fi. And if you're a fan of Party Down, you know why I don't like saying I like hard sci-fi.
All right.
It's
I
a
don't know what
it's,
Party Down is.
Party Down was a IFC show
Okay.
with Adam Scott and
Okay.
Ken Marino, and they basically play caterers. But there's this one character named Roland who's like the pretentious guy who's like, I hate Star Wars. That's not science fiction. I like hard sci-fi.
No, okay. Okay. No, you
But
sold me
I
a Ken
really
Marino.
do.
I'm a fan of the state, but I will
Yeah.
check
Oh,
that.
you gotta. I love Ken. Ken is one of those like he's got like I don't know what he has, but he's just so good at just being like a goofy guy.
Yes. Oh my
And
God.
if you love him, you have to watch Party Down.
I will. It is now. It has bulleted to the top of my to-watch list for the small amount of free time I have in the world or off the world out here in space. But uh, we're going to be pulling back into spaceport in a bit, but. I didn't submit this question beforehand, so forgive me, but I have to know, like, your motor is insane. Where does this? Have you always had this sort of work ethic? You just don't seem to stop or put out bad material.
Well, I don't know. Some of it might be bad, depending on who you ask, or the blog rejection letters I get.
Oh God! Well, yeah, Gotsicle's reviews are basically a 200 character apology, but.
I honestly not to be too much of a downer, but like in 2006, I was told I have an autoimmune disease, and when
Right.
you're 25 and you're like, I'm on the, I was in doing winter music conference, which is a big thing for DJs in Miami. Like I thought, like, all right, here we go, and then they're kind of like, nope, hit you back down with this, and I just went, you know what? Fuck, the mortality then hits you, and you go, all right, well, you don't get to live forever, and if you want to do shit, do it now.
Wow,
So that's really why I
intense.
do as much as I can, is because I don't know for the length of time that I get to be around.
Holy
So let's
smokes,
do as
man.
much as I can, and let's explore everything that I want to do, and not sit there and go, like, what's the beginning of that Butthole Surfer quote from Satan? It's better to regret something you have done than regret something you haven't.
1,000,000%.
I think that's basically my ethos.
Not only do you win the prize for the first Butthole Surfers reference on Space Couch, believe it or not, that is, pardon the pun, stellar, not in terms of being something great, but just so outside of my own perspective. And we don't need to get into that a lot. I'm sure that could be a book, but uh, definitely uh, not something I can really relate to, but a fascinating, if you will. I don't mean to make light of it, it's just such a different thing from me. But the music doesn't sound rushed in any way. Like to say nothing of the fact that a lot of it's like a lower BPM or whatever. Like it sounds fully complete and just meticulously, scientifically created in a lab with a piece of tweezers. That doesn't piece by piece with tweezers. I meant to say.
Well, I think it's like with anything, the more you do it, the more it just becomes second nature. You know, I spent a good amount of time working for Apple and learning Logic Pro as a Logic trainer. So there's a lot of back end stuff that I can do, you know, without thinking about it.
Okay.
Like people ask me why I still use Logic when you can use like Ableton Live or something that's supposed to be more user friendly. It's like because it's not user friendly to me. Like I can sit down, like I can tell you, I wrote Undertow in probably 4 hours.
What?
I couldn't probably do that in any other program just because I can work so quickly in the environment that I'm used to. And again, doing it 10 years, you kind of start to know what works and what doesn't work and when to say this idea is not coming together. Move on to the, you know, whatever's going to be next. And I think can be hard for a lot of people to know yourself enough to say that this isn't working.
Interesting.
Because not everything that you do has to be released. And I think from younger producers that I've talked to, especially in electronic music, there's this rush to like, oh, I've got my first track, it has to go out, it has to go on the label. And I feel like, no, man, make a bunch of fucking bullshit. Make 100 of these, and then maybe you can get to that point where like you know, have some perspective to realize that the first thing because if I dug out the first thing I made as Slider, everyone would laugh. You know, it was the most sophomoric thing that I did. I was using Rebirth.
Yeah.
Rebirth. I used to use a program called Jescola's Buzz, which is a freeware tracker.
Oh, so good.
So like, yeah, man. Just,
love it.
Gotta hone. I know it sounds cheesy, but hone the craft.
Hone the craft, and you know what? Like you have after having honed the craft, I'm sure you may have done this. Go back a few years later, pick out the best part of that track that would have otherwise sucked, and now you've got like the bass line taken care of. It's it'll come back around, man.
Yeah, I've gone back to sessions and pulled out like basically made sample packs out of false starts. Like I have a whole folder on Dropbox of just beats.
Nice.
And anytime anyone asks me like, hey, you want to do a collab? And I was like, check out all these and see what you feel might
there you go.
move you, because I've got a plethora of like basically false starts.
That's awesome. Well, your false starts become pieces, like, and you know, you use the whole buffalo, the whole sonic buffalo. We talked a little bit about the micro brute. Is there any other piece of gear or like a VST that you're really excited about these days?
Well, doing sound design for like I make sample packs for Loop Masters. That's my day job.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I really like some of the newer cutting edge stuff that's kind of out there. And my favorite piece of hardware that I looked at, actually bought instantly, was the Micro Freak, just because I loved playing with the Brute so much. And it's a beastly little box. I think people really kind of like underappreciate the Micro Brute. So the Micro Freak is kind of the companion to it. And it's got a little bit of the modular Eurorack kind of feel to it.
Okay.
And it treats it a little bit differently. There's a nice little cycling envelope that you can play with. So it makes different sounds. So anything that kind of makes different sounds, I'm really keen on. Unfiltered Audio's new Lion synthesizer.
Okay.
Highly recommend checking that out, because it takes those kind of crazy modular, again, effects plugins that they made last year and makes that into a synthesizer, which for me is way more interesting.
That feels good. That feels,
yeah. I think some of the kind of glitchy, weird, like IDM plugins, you know, they're kind of like happy accidents. Whereas if you put it into a synthesizer, there's a little bit more control and there's a little more finesse in figuring out, okay, well, you know, this is how this is going to sound, instead of just going like, I wonder what this is going to sound like. So
Dre
yeah,
says I
that
finally got my MF working. It's weird about power.
I've
Do you have-
heard that a couple people, like because I've posted on Facebook how much I love my micro freak, and I've heard a few people find that there's some build issues. So
well, it's just maybe you're not freaky enough, Dre.
no,
I'm just
Arturia is pretty good about support. I will say that because
Okay.
I used to have a key bed, like one of their key stations, and a couple keys went dead, and they were super
awesome.
easy to work with to get it fixed. So I would say reach out to Arturia and see what they've got to say because they might send you a new one.
All right, all right. Well, with with that stamp of approval, I'll definitely look into that. Like I don't know, like I'm filling up my desk with more hardware, but I'll make room for
Yeah.
that.
It's one of those questions you have to ask yourself is like, do I really like what does this bring to the table that I don't already have?
That is there
Yeah.
is that, and I've brought this up on prior space couches, and I would be fascinated to get your opinion on it. And we might go a little long here, but it's the internet. It's fine. It's not like we're gonna. CNN is not up next. The I noticed way back when, like my friends would always talk about, I'll start a band as soon as.
Oh God,
I'll start
I
my
know
band.
where you're going.
God damn it, right? Like as soon as I get this, the micro Korg was the big thing at the time, or
I
like
had one of those.
yeah, right, with the
Those
little
were fun.
goofy white
Yeah,
microphone.
the vocoder was the funnest thing about that.
It was
thing.
great. It was great,
Until
but like
mine died.
well, right, but like at the time, it was like I'll need to work like extra shifts at Church's Chicken or wherever, and to save up for it, and then I'll start. Or as soon as I get this computer that can run the brand new Cubase 3 or whatever, then I'll start. And then the guys like Caustic at the time who's just like I don't know anything about music per se, but I'm gonna loop a bunch of Thundercat samples and then just start and not kind of wait for the gun. So yes, hardware is great, but you don't rely on that as like to wait for the go whistle. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think because I've dealt with this firsthand. Because when I would teach Logic, I
Oh,
would
you taught
always
it.
get
Wow.
the guy that would say like, "Well, I can't use Logic until they finish, fix that," or like, like I can't make my record until this happens. And I feel like that's the hurdle that a lot of people put in front of themselves because they're fearing that failure aspect.
Okay.
Like,
Talk to me about that for a second.
I can't make my album yet because I don't have this or I don't have that, and people tend to. It's like that barrier that they want to put up because it allows them to think, well, I can be this, and they love that idea of it. But sitting down and actually doing it is really scary.
Yes.
And I think for a lot of people, when you're dealing with your own personality and trying to put that out into art, it's very humbling and also scary. And if you're coming at it from this idea of like, well, I have to be good at the beginning, because again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like if you have this idea that like out of the gate, you're great because you get all of this stuff pushed on you, like overnight sensations, this idea that one day someone rolled out of bed and wrote an awesome song just out of the blue and that never happens.
Right. There's a team of people behind the Miley Cyrus or whatever the fuck.
So I would, when it comes to hardware and gear, I think it is definitely better to know what you have and what the limitation is that you're hitting that makes you go, well, how do I fix that limitation? And this piece of gear can be the answer to that. But the minute you start collecting gear, because I remember, you always have that one friend, right, who's got the rich parents, and they bought him everything.
Yeah.
See, he's got the Prophet, he's got the Andromeda, he's ready to go, and he's got nothing. Right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Let me put up these pictures of my Novation station and not actually any audio.
So I think the best thing for, if you're finding yourself in this idea of like, well, I need this in order to do X, is to roll back and look at some of the people who did so many beautiful pieces of music with such little.
Fascinating.
and just
Awesome.
realize that your creativity is not hindered by what you have. It's only hindered by what you can push out with what you've got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And overcoming fear, like to a certain extent, not to get too highfalutin, but I liked
Totally.
your
Yeah.
that's I never really thought about it like that. But we'll get just
Yeah. There's
go.
also this really
I was just gonna say
sorry.
go Green Lantern on it, but
Yeah.
we like comic books here out in space. So that's all I had. I probably stepped over your great point with my fucking dumb Green
Oh
Lantern
no, I
joke.
was just gonna loop back in. There's a quote from Ira Glass. It's called "The Gap," and I really love it because it kind of mirrors what I've been saying. Is that like when you have great taste and you've listened to all this awesome music and you want to be as good as that, you got to close that gap, and the only way that you can close that gap is by doing work. So do a bunch of shit, and you'll start to
Ooh.
close the gap, and then maybe you keep going, and you're going to sit back and go, okay, wow, I did something that I'm happy with, and maybe even I think is good.
Closing the gap.
Yeah.
That that honestly kind of just knocked me on my space butt. So I love it. Let's make that the out, unless you want to throw anything else about out there about Slider you want out in the world.
No, only that I'm not Slaughter.
Oh no! Is it? Do you get that?
People like to poke fun,
Okay.
and I go along with it because it's funny.
All right. He's not Slaughter. Slider. Totally different guy.
Yeah.
I don't know if any
Less
Slaughter.
hair.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. This has been a fantastic episode. I'll have my Magic Space controller back. Um, oh my gosh. You guys, next Sunday there won't be a Space Couch, but we changed that to the Tuesday after so we could have superstar of Tiger Squawk Record Science Fiction on. That's next week. That's this. But now is this week. Colin, this has been an amazing episode. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Come out to Boston or something, man. Or however you want to put your music out there. Confusioninc.bandcamp.com. This is a Space Couch for Slider. Signing off. I don't really have like a sign off. I should probably think of one.
Catchphrase.
Yeah, like I start the show with call the ships to Davenport and prepare for Divanarchy, but I should really come up with a space goodbye or some bullshit. All right, so okay, we're on ending credits right now. We traditionally talk over these. I saw you have a cat in the background. What's your cat's name?
I have multiple cats.
Oh, great.
This one is Munster. It's my wife's cat.
Oh, fantastic.
If people follow me on Instagram, they've seen Studio Cat, which is my Siamese. Her name is Nan.
Okay.
She used to be Banana, but she's old now, so we call her Nan.
She's noun. She's now Nan. She's noun. No, we got into a thing on the Damon episode about industrial pet calendar. So I'll extend the offer.
I got some photos if you need.
All right. Well, you put me in touch with Nan's agent and Nan's sync manager, and we'll make that happen. All right. Space Couch